Hey everybody, it's Chad. Welcome to Chad Eaves Communication Coach Live. We are simulcasting on YouTube, LinkedIn, um, Instagram. As soon as we get the that up and going here, because you have to kind of do a little delayed thing if you're not familiar with that. And in Facebook, we're also on Facebook as well. So just a quick touch base with everybody here, touch on some things to do with communication, some updates, and some of the stuff that's going on some of the online platforms. If you are looking to get that little bit extra edge when it comes to things on communication. For those of you who are not familiar with it, there are two primary things that we have. And these are going to be for the general business population and also for the veteran community that I work with as a Navy veteran as well. So I'll put up the links to that so you can write it down and go check it out if you so desire. Also, we'll get into a couple of things that are going on here in the business world. For those of you that are not familiar with the kind of coaching and that I do regarding communication, it is business coaching, it is business communication. That is the area that I focus in and work with people on. Because Lord knows there is enough work to go on just in that area. So that is the area that I focus on. And Go ahead and throw this on down here. We'll, hang on, let me fix this here. We'll get that to scroll. That's better. So if you want to check those out, you can go to one of those websites. I do notice that the domains have a suffix of coach and not con. So that's something that's a little different sometimes can be a sticking point when people are looking to get to the sites. But those are both learning sites. You can explore more about those right there. One of the interesting things that has come out in the recent week or so in the media, a lot of things that influence communication. And one of the ones is that a lot of organizations are making more of an effort to become more streamlined, and they are eliminating middle manager positions. And there's obviously a benefit for that when it comes from a financial perspective. It's people you're not paying. Now, how does that translate into an effectiveness perspective, a productivity perspective, retention even, and of course, communication? Because a lot of times when this happens, you're diluting your effectiveness as far as leadership in the sense that I'm going to bring in the second camera here. Let's do this. So we can also do some notations and share some stuff with you. So let's bring this camera in here. So in most ways, kind of the conventionally accepted ratio for managers to employees, I'll do this here, is typically about 10 to 1, plus or minus some. Some teams could go down to, the 5 to 1 where they need a lot of oversight, or maybe something's a higher risk activity that's being done. But for most business applications, this is kind of the sweet spot you're looking at. Now, you probably know I've got more people on my team than that, or my team has more people than that for a manager. And when we start seeing that, you start seeing this breakdown in effectiveness. You get the bump as far as what you're saving financially, but what is it going to, what's the impact going to be, especially if you're an organization that's already in distress, like a Boeing or somebody like that. I'm not saying they're doing this, but I'm just saying if you're an organization, an organization that's in distress, that's not a real good idea of something to do. So something to keep in mind here, that we want to stay around in that 10 to 1 range. Because the other thing to keep in mind, when you're looking at an organization, you typically have your apex leaders up here, and then you have your line employees, let's say, your line workers. Having accessibility to your leaders is, it depends on the culture and what people are looking to do. And another way to think about this here is, you might have other little triangles, and these are your other teams and leaders, and they all kind of stack on each other in a kind of bizarre kind of way. When you start eliminating these leaders, instead of having, this shape maybe in an organization, you start getting to where you're losing that top level. So instead of having like this apex triangle when you're trying to access people, effectively what you could have is something that's more like this, and then you just start getting this nowhere, like road to nowhere type of situation, and then you can actually have this break between the workforce. It's almost like a shallowing here with a little point. And you start getting these breaks in your leadership and stuff. And what this represents is you'll have people higher up in the organization without effective communication going between their level to the level below them, and you get this break. That's what this is representing. And you'll start getting this flattening, which is what the curve is doing. And everything starts to break down. Your communication starts to break down. A lot of organizations will start trying to rely on technology to make up that gap. I'm sure AI is part of this with some people, and that can work to a certain extent. But is it going to make up, for that lack of, human leadership? And the answer to that's typically no, and that's where they kind of run into problems. So it'll be interesting to see how this works out over the near future, because you're going to have a lot of middle managers and people in that role that are going to be losing their jobs. And also, one of the things that people lose sight of is who moves into that level above. There's also been something lately where a lot of organizations have been holding back or pulling back on hiring entry level workers using AI or nobody. And they're going to begin to hit a situation probably in a couple of years down the road where there's no backfill, there's no pipeline. They're kind of turning off that faucet. And who are they going to replace those more senior people with? Because either people are going to retire, they get another job, they die, whatever happens, and then there's really no one to go in and fill into that next slot. Now there are some organizations who are being very proactive about still hiring people who are junior, and I think they're going to really come out ahead. Because human capital is going to be a huge advantage moving forward, regardless of what industry you are. Because technology is in AI. This is something that I'll get into discussion with clients and other people. What's the impact of AI when it comes to communication and business in general? And it's like any other technology. Automation advances. It happens. AI is not going away. So it really is a bad idea to kind of plant your flag on that hill and say, we're not using AI, I'm not going to do it. You're going to become redundant probably at some point. But the question is, how do you use it to augment what you're doing? How do you use it to be better? And one way to think about this is if you look at, bring up my little thing here. If you look at different types of workers, and say, you have different types of performers. And so you have your A, you have your B, C, D, and F. Realistically, if you find yourself in the A or B crowd, you need to learn how to use AI. Now, with communication, there's lots of different ways you can do it. You do it for video production. I think it has a good value there. For writing and stuff like that, I think that's still handicapping people. Same thing with presentations, because there are, Microsoft PowerPoint. You can use Copilot to create a presentation. There's other options out there as well. The problem is we learn a lot from the creation, and presentations are a really good example of this, where you do the research, you're using your knowledge, you're creating these presentations, and then you're going and delivering them. The good thing about going through that process, not only learning what works and the information that you should share, you also learn what the information is that you should not share. And that's just as important. Plus, you get questions during the presentation. If you didn't put it together, it's a lot less likely that you're going to be able to answer those questions that come up. Also, if you lean too heavily into using AI to create your presentations, you're devaluing yourself. At some point, you're not going to be necessary. Either you hit, the people that commissioned the presentation, your boss, whoever, just clicks a button that plays the presentation, and that's it. And eventually, maybe there's a hologram that answers the questions or something like that. That's probably not as far off as what we might want to think. But there's a difference between augmenting and leveraging on the technology and avoiding it completely. Because if you're in this A or B here, the name of the game is going to be to learn how to leverage the AI technology or anything that you learn, whether it's what you do as your core function, what you do from a communication perspective. You can't just replace those skills by using another tool. So let's say you start writing memos with AI, your writing skills are going to degrade. Your analysis skills, your comprehension skills, all those things are going to degrade. It's kind of like the issue with Cliff Notes. Yeah, you can get the top, 5% of the content, but you're missing a lot of the other content, the nuance, understanding stuff, being able to identify trends, patterns, and stuff like that. Now, let's say you or someone maybe you're asking for a friend that's not so hot at their job. And it could be in communication, it could be at their core function, their CD or F performer. You really kind of got a couple options, and get better at something, or you're probably going to suffer some fairly negative consequences. But that's kind of how AI can work. And I actually write about this topic in an article that's posted in both of those websites, veteran communication.coach and business communication.coach, talking about mediocrity and a simple framework when it comes to communication, but also anything we do as far as how you avoid it and how you can manage that. Because there are people that kind of coast by and languish by, and some people get lucky, and hope as a strategy seems to work for them, but that's generally not a good long-term topic. So a couple things there on AI and middle managers, and to keep in mind. One of the other things that I've always found interesting when it comes to communications is the definition that people use. And there's really just one definition, but you'll hear it all kinds of things. Oh, it's understanding, it's comprehension, it's getting people to do stuff, whatever it might be. And those are all wrong. And this is something that I also post about on one of those two websites that you can go there and find the solution on there, because it's something super, super simple. It's not overly complicated. People make it complicated, but it's pretty straightforward, and it's the exchange of information between two people, two parties. That's it. And it's nothing more complicated. People will try to, make it sound more grandiose, more complex and stuff like that, typically for their own benefit, so that people will think they're smarter, when really, when it comes to communication and most anything else, simplification is the best approach, which is almost always the case with communication, unless you're trying to confuse your audience, which sometimes can be a desired outcome, depending on what you're doing. There was also some talk in the past week around where more employers are, they've had enough with the non-work communication at work. Now, whether it is around current events, politics, people talking about pet causes, the tide has turned on this. There's another article that I wrote on those sites that you can go there and dig into for more detail. But once upon a time, it was the biggest annoyance at work was someone trying to sell their kids chocolate bars, and now it's everything. It's evolved into a form of bullying, of you know, uh, discussion that is really impairing why a business exists. And so companies and leaders now are being to set firmer guidelines on what is acceptable, what is not acceptable. And, my opinion is the way it should be. It should never have been, allowed to get to the extent now, far too political, far too much bringing in current events than what's really applicable in the workspace. And we've seen it get out of hand completely to where you have destruction of property, trespassing, bullying or assaulting, yelling at coworkers and other people, and that's being reined in. Now, some people are going to think, "Oh, this is not good. You're infringing my freedom of expression." You don't have that at work. People need to, probably get a better understanding of it. The other thing too is, regardless of what you think about this is the trend that's happening right now. And so it's really important to recognize this and understand this going forward. Because no matter what you think, if your employer has made this decision, your decisions are either, from your perspective, are to go ahead and go with the policy or to go somewhere else. And this is one of the biggest issues that some people have run into, and I've seen at some clients, is where people who are not in policy making positions think they should be able to make policy for an employer. That's not the case. If you're not in a position where you make policy, typically in some kind of senior leadership position, that's outside the scope of why you have a job. And when you communicate beyond that scope, that's not going to probably turn out very well. And so employers are beginning to crack down on that. So something just to be aware of, whether you like it or not. So all those different items I address in those websites. This is something that comes out every single week. And there's also office hours for members of those websites. And we also do some community working sessions. And so what the idea behind that is, if you have stuff you need to do, especially around communication, we all log in together and we set aside those 2 hours to work. And that is done Wednesdays from 2 to 4 p.m. Central Time. And that's time that you can just set aside. We log in together and greet each other. You work. There could be some short discussion at the other end of it, but it's time that you can set aside. And it's an accountability thing for those of you that can benefit from that. For the veteran group, I do have office hours on Tuesdays from 2 to 4. And then for the business communication group, there are office hours on Thursdays from 2 to 4. So those are additional benefits that come with those memberships. So something to consider for that. Now, one of the things I want to do today too was kind of wrap up the whole communication in the movies that I've done for the summer. There's going to be some more editions of that coming out. These are videos you'll find at my YouTube page, chat on youtube.com. And we this past summer talked about Formula One, the movie, Superman, and Jurassic Park. I did not see Fantastic Four. It just did not appeal to me. I didn't feel like sitting through that in a theater. And far and away, out of those three, in my opinion, the best movie was Formula One, the movie. I am a Formula One fan, have been for decades. I love the auto racing. I love that sport. But if you look and dive into how well everything was built, everything was scripted into that movie, it's just a really good example of do's and don'ts in communication and leadership and teamwork. And there's actually 3 little mini video vignettes that I created because they wouldn't fit into one. But you can go there and check that out. The next 2 movies that I did for the summer, Superman and Jurassic Park, guess I would probably put Superman as number two, and then Jurassic Park is number three, which is kind of interesting because Jurassic Park was the number one movie of the summer by revenue, but I thought it was a pretty worthless movie, to be quite honest. It's like the dinosaurs have kind of lost their luster. From a special effects perspective, I kind of think people with a really good computer could have done it. There are a couple of good examples of leadership and communication that I talk about in those little vignettes, but it wasn't particularly good from that perspective. And Superman, uh, the two best communicators in that movie are the Lois Lane character and Mr. Terrific. Superman's kind of weak. He's very weak. He has to get rescued all movie. It's not really a good Superman movie, to be quite honest. And not a real big fan of the director, myself, James Gunn. He's got a number of issues um, that I don't particularly, I'm not very sympathetic to. But from communication, the movies from the summer, Formula One, Superman, Jurassic Park. Though Jurassic Park is, I mean, Formula One is way head and shoulders above Superman and Jurassic Park. Now, something in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be speaking at the Vet Social 25 Summit. It's a virtual summit for veterans. I'm going to be speaking on before, during, and after about introductions, about some different considerations that veterans and spouses can have when we meet people, and how do we talk about what we've done, stuff like that. It's a free event. There's still registrations available. If you go to my website, chadeaves.com, or I'll put links on the other sites too. You can register for free to that event. That's registration is still open to that. That happens September 12th and September 13th. So something to keep in mind and to look out for. And we'll go ahead and wrap up here in just a minute. Just wanted to touch base on a couple different things. And also, let me bring this up and share this with you here. See here. Just in case you were kind of curious about this here is, let's do this. Here we go. So this here is actually the homepage for the Veteran Communication Coach. And you can see here where we have some different posts. There are courses that are being added to this. These are two of the first courses we have. And also this here shows the office hours and the co-working times that we have scheduled for going on. So it's a really, there's a daily activity on these sites. If you're a veteran working on your business communication skills, great way to invest in yourself. This here is the business communication coach. This is for more general, populations who aren't veterans. Similar information and just some of the discussions we have and the way that's applied is some of the primary differences. But you can go there and explore those for sure. And also, you'll find links there to my various social media channels, whatever you're watching this on. I'm also on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. So you can follow me there. There'll be links from any of those sites or my other site to get there. If you have any questions, you can submit them there. Join one of those two websites. You can, bring them to the office hours. Communication. The reason why I set this up like this is, a lot of times places will go and they'll have that, half a day or a whole day or whatever training on communication. The challenge is this is something that we've done for years, most of our life, and a lot of us haven't been doing so hot at it. And it's not going to be fixed with a 3-hour training or an 8-hour training, whatever it might be. It can make people feel good. You get a nice little binder out of it. But with this approach, what you'll get is something new every week, discussion every week about it. And so it's a much more sustainable way of learning. So something to think about for yourself individually, for your company, or maybe bring to your employer, a way to become better, to become a more effective communicator on an ongoing basis. Because the thing is not to like become this grand communicator in one session, is that you become better today than you were yesterday. So with that, I'd like to thank everybody out there for tuning in today. These recordings will be available on those sites, and probably the YouTube site. It may be there as well. So everybody take care, communicate well, and I look forward to being in touch with you sometime in the future.